Alright guys, so in this video we're going to focus on something called functions. Now a function is a group of statements that together perform a task. That is the computer science definition. So this is the definition. Function is a group of statements that together perform a task. Now that is the computer science function definition. Now what in our own words we can define function as something. Now consider yourself as the boss of your game development company and you want your employees to work on different functionalities of your game. So what you can do is like there are two employees, they're like Sarah and Hannah. What you want Sarah to do is you will say, Sarah, you have to work on all the functionalities of the game while the game is offline. And what you want to do, Hannah, you want to like work on all the functionalities when the game is online. So in that way, pretty much you can divide the code into like two pieces and like divide the work. When you're in a workspace in a professional environment, let's say your manager can designate a work like in that way. So if that confuses you, I'll promise I'll definitely make as easy as possible in this tutorial. So let's just begin with actually building a function. So in order to build a function, what you need to do is you need to do three things. You need to actually build a function, and you need to call it in the main, and then you have to declare it or prototype it. So first thing is we build a function, which we do right over here outside the main, and we need to like call the function, which we do in the main, and then we need to prototype the function, which we do usually under the header files under over here over at line 4. So let's just quickly build our function. And in order to do that, what we do is we write our function. The first step was to build a function, so we build a function. So in order to build a function, what you do is you type in void. Now why do you type void? You'll know it a bit later. I'm going to tell you. If we'll tell you now, you're going to confuse yourself. So just remember, in order to build a function, what you do is you have to type void, and after that you have to type the name of your function. So I'm going to name this function as let's say Sarah, and void Sarah, and with those parameters, open and close parentheses, empty parameters, and then actually we're building a function that would see out something on the screen. Now in order to see out something on the screen, we might have a working function that simply says this is a function built built by Sarah when the game is let's say offline. So Sarah, we are the boss and we want Sarah to work on all those functionalities of the game when the game is offline. And let's build another function. So always bad programming practice to copy and paste, but hey, let's save the time. So another function, this function is built by, let's say, Hannah, and let me just change this to small s so that don't get confused. So Hannah with Hanna, make sure you spell this right, so in later you don't get confused. So we might want to end that line, or let's just end that line. So let's just type endl over here, and then end line over here. Now that we have our functions built, now the second step was to call the function. Remember, build a function, call a function in the main, and then prototype a function. So now that we have built our two functions, now we can call the function. So in order to call the function, what you do is you like type in exactly the name of the function. So Sarah in this case with empty parameters, and add a semicolon to that. Make sure this semicolon is not included in here. So in place of semicolon, we actually have the whole body of the function. So don't get confused. You accidentally add a semicolon over here, or your program won't work. So what you do is you type Sarah, your function name, the empty parameters, and the semicolon. And next, go ahead and type your Hannah function. And you can actually flip-flop which function you want to run first. You can actually, if you want to work Hannah function first, you can write Hannah, because compilers work from top to bottom. So the symmetry depends on you. The order depends on what you want. I want Sarah function to work first, so that's why I wrote in the first place. So now that we have successfully, let's say, called the function, now the third step is to prototype the function. Or in easy words, you can say declare a function or register a function. Remember, again, build a function, call a function, prototype a function. So our third step would be very simple. Go ahead and copy this. For the sake of simplicity, add a semicolon, because we are just prototyping. So we have already built the function, and now we're just telling the compiler that, hey compiler, later on you're gonna come across this function, so don't give us errors. So we're actually telling you in the first place that we're going to build a function, and later when you come across Sarah, look in outside the main, and when you find Sarah, and then run Sarah. So that is how you like prototype a function. And in order to prototype Hannah, what you do is copy it, Control C, Control V, add a semicolon to that. And now let me just check if I have any errors. Oh, and I do have errors. How stupid I am. I have read the semicolon and outside the int main. So again, before running the program, let me just recap this one more time. What we did was we build the functions, we call the functions, and then the third step is we prototype the functions. And why we do prototyping? It's just like registering to the compiler that, hey, we have built the functions and we want you to know that we have built the functions. So this third step is really important and confuses most people. Hey, why we prototype the function if we have built the function right here? And so why we prototype the function? Now the answer to that is that in the real world, programs are really, really huge. Now huge programs have tons of, like, they have the same single line header, but they might have this 300 lines function. So it's actually to like this prototype it in only in one line, and tell the compiler that later on you're gonna come across 300 line function, and we don't want you to freak out and give errors. And what is happening in the int main is it's basically like a control panel. Here you'll enter press the button Sarah, and Sarah's gonna run. Press the button Hannah, and Hannah's gonna run. That is actually happening behind the scenes. So let's just build and run the program. And now you see this is a function built by Sarah, and ignore the spellings if the spellings is wrong. Okay, this is a function built by Sarah when the game is offline. This is a function built by Hannah when the game is offline. So you get the point. Forgive me for the typos. I can actually, okay, now it's good. So again, now what we like wrote for in the first place, we write Sarah in the first place. So our compiler is going to call Sarah function in the first place, and in the second function, in the second line, our Hannah function is going to run. So our compiler calls the Hannah function. So that is pretty much the theory behind the functions. Now to visually represent it, we're going to have to come to Paint. So now over here, it's a little visualization for you to understand what is actually happening behind the scenes. So it's a little like blueprint. So this is our boss, that is of course you, and you have your two employees, Sarah and Hannah, employee 1 and employee 2. So you want the employee 1, that is Sarah, to work on the offline function of the game, and you want employee 2, that is Hannah, to work on the online functions and functionalities of the game. So they both have done their jobs building this function. So and remember, they don't have access. Now this is actually like I'm explaining in a point of view of real world. So in the real world, we these employee 1 does not have access to the registration part or the prototyping part or whatever you can call it. And this control panel, that is our main activity in which our function is being called, these two things are being controlled by our boss. And our boss has indirect control over function 1 and function 2, but our employees cannot have access to this control panel or this header file. So consider these files as separate when you're working in real world environment. So what we did was we built the function 1, function 2. We called the function, call function 1, call function 2, and then we prototype the function or register the function. In simple words, register 1, prototype 1, register function 2 or prototype 2. And then our header file was usual using namespace std and include iOS stream. So that is pretty much the theory behind functions. Now let's just quickly recap this a bit. What we did was we built the function, we called the function, and we prototype the functions. Now questions may arise that why do you type in void? Remember I told you I'm going to tell it later. Void does not return anything. So what this thing is called the return type. This void right here is called the return type. This is your function name. These are the parameters of the function, and this is the return type. Now let's just remember, if you're giving a test or an exam, remember those terms. This is called return type. Now the return type might be void, might be int, or I think it might be float or any other. So that's and why do you prototype? Prototype helps the compiler to trap bugs. I read it somewhere, I don't know where, but prototyping basically helps to give it a content view, not the actual view, but give it a little content view of the program. Because when you open a book, you see all the contents, then you can see this is a content and this is located in page number 677 and so similar to that. I'm actually comparing this example with a book. So that is why prototype. Now go ahead and practice this code again and again and watch the next video and come back to this video. So if you don't get the concept of this video, or if you're like 50% understood and 50% confused, then go watch the next video, in which I'm going to be covering functions with parameters and return type, functions which have some thing to return. So in this case we're going to return nothing, and nothing means void. Void actually means nothing or to return nothing. So don't get confused, do it the program, remember the syntax for the first time. You're going to get confused, so memorize it in your brain, practice this, and I'll see you guys in the next video.